Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for new stories. The galaxy, once ruled by the hierarchy of Xyrex, was a mosaic of diverse and powerful species, each with their own traditions, tech, and ways of conquest. They had long dismissed humanity as insignificant, a fleeting species confined to their puny blue planet. But, unbeknownst to the vast cosmic empires, humanity had a secret, an untapped potential for greatness that had been brewing for centuries. It started with a single ship, a vessel built not by the Xyrex or any advanced race, but by a collection of human nations. This ship, the Zephyr, was designed with one purpose: to challenge the norms of the galaxy. A team of the best and brightest human minds worked tirelessly on it, incorporating new tech from every corner of humanity's ingenuity. Little did the galaxy know this ship was just the beginning. The Xyrex Empire, with its hundreds of warships and armies of genetically engineered soldiers, scoffed when they heard rumors of human ships venturing into the stars. They were in for an awakening. The Zephyr's maiden voyage was an unassuming spectacle, just another ship in a vast galaxy. But it was built to prove something, to demonstrate that humans could adapt, innovate, and conquer, even in places where the older races had failed to even begin. When the Zephyr encountered its first hostile alien fleet, a warband of Kraz, a species known for their ruthless and unyielding tactics, the humans didn't fight the way anyone expected. No lasers, no overwhelming firepower, no reliance on superior technology. They used strategy. They used flexibility. They used their ability to think on their feet, to learn, adapt, and perform feats in any circumstance or position. The Kraz, accustomed to slaughtering their foes by brute force, were initially confident they'd obliterate this feeble human ship. But the humans, thinking like no other species could, quickly shifted tactics. They used the environment of the nearby asteroid field to their advantage, luring the Kraz into a trap where their superior weapons and tactics were nullified. The battle was swift and brutal, but the result was clear: the Zephyr emerged victorious. News of the victory spread through the galaxy like wildfire. But it wasn't just the success that shocked the Xyrex and the other alien factions. It was the audacity of humanity's approach. Their ability to succeed despite being outnumbered, outgunned, and underpowered was an affront to the entire galactic status quo. The humans hadn't just won, they had done it by defying every assumption about how a lesser species should behave in combat. The Xyrex Empire issued a statement in response, calling the victory a fluke. Their pride, their arrogance, prevented them from seeing the potential of humanity's ingenuity. But what they couldn't ignore was that this wasn't an isolated event. As humanity's fleet grew, their victories multiplied. They didn't need advanced weaponry or superior forces to win battles, they just needed to use their greatest strength: versatility. Humanity's victory in that first encounter was just the beginning. Soon, the galaxy would learn that humans didn't need to conquer in the traditional sense. They could do it in any position, in any form, no matter the odds stacked against them. The Xyrex would soon learn the true meaning of human ingenuity, and the galaxy would never be the same again. In the wake of the Kraz defeat, the galaxy began to stir. Rumors spread like wildfire across the stars, fueling both curiosity and fear about the humans. The Xyrex Empire, the most powerful faction in the galaxy, issued an official decree: humanity was to be crushed, wiped from the stars. But as the human fleet continued to grow, so did the number of successes. The Zephyr was no longer the only ship in the fleet. Humanity now commanded dozens of vessels, each one more advanced than the last, each one built to outperform the expectations of any who doubted them. The human fleet didn't focus on quantity, they focused on quality. Every ship, every piece of technology, was an expression of humanity's drive to overcome any obstacle. With limited resources, they relied on their most powerful asset: the willingness to adapt and think outside the box. One of the galaxy's oldest and most feared species, the Nzari, an insectoid race of towering, emotionless warriors, had always been a symbol of unyielding discipline. They valued precision, honor, and the ability to crush their enemies with flawless tactics. Their forces had never been defeated in a direct confrontation for over 3,000 years. So when the Nzari learned of the growing human fleet, they were less than impressed. To them, the humans were little more than an inconvenience, an irritant to be snuffed out in an instant. Their warships were massive, their soldiers terrifying, and their strategy near perfect. They considered themselves the pinnacle of combat prowess. But as they neared human-controlled space, the Nzari made a fateful mistake. Underestimating humanity once again, the Nzari launched a large fleet toward a key human colony on the fringe of the galaxy. Their plan was simple: an overwhelming assault, a quick strike to wipe the humans off the map before they could grow too powerful. They calculated that the humans would flee in terror as any other race would. But what they didn't anticipate was how the humans would fight back. Unlike the Krahs, the Nzari weren't impulsive. They didn't rush into battle with arrogance. Their battle tactics were methodical, precise, and deadly. They expected humans to fall into line and either face annihilation or beg for mercy. Instead, the humans did something unexpected. The human fleet was not designed to engage in a full-scale war of attrition. Instead, their leaders had taken a different approach. They didn't fight directly. The human strategy was based on speed, deception, and, most importantly, surprise. The Nzari, accustomed to battles of sheer force and honor, were unprepared for what was to come. The humans used their ships in ways that seemed almost nonsensical to the Nzari. Their vessels didn't follow any logical pattern of attack or defense. They didn't form neat formations, they didn't charge in unison, and they didn't engage in predictable combat maneuvers. Instead, the human fleet split into smaller squadrons, scattered across multiple sectors. At first, it seemed like chaos, a collection of disjointed ships flailing around in an effort to escape the Nzari assault. But it wasn't chaos, it was strategy. The humans used a clever trick, a series of timed, synchronized ambushes that lured the Nzari ships into vulnerable positions. They set up fake signals to mislead the Nzari into attacking decoy ships, which were filled with explosive traps. As the Nzari's massive warships dove into the trap, they were taken out in a series of deadly skirmishes, each one more devastating than the last. The Nzari hadn't even realized they were being played. In one particularly daring move, a small fleet of human fighters engaged in a series of hit-and-run tactics. With their fast, agile ships, they managed to infiltrate the Nzari flagship, undetected by the larger, more lumbering vessels of the Nzari fleet. The humans planted bombs in key systems, setting off a chain reaction that crippled the Nzari leadership. What had begun as a battle for supremacy had now turned into a nightmare for the insectoid race. The Nzari's defeat came in stages. First, their ships were scattered and confused by the hit-and-run tactics. Then, key fleets were disabled by the hidden explosive traps set by the humans. And finally, their leadership, the core of their discipline and order, was shattered by the destruction of their flagship. In the end, the Nzari were forced to retreat, utterly humiliated. The results of the battle sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Nzari, a race that had once considered itself invincible, had been bested by a species they had dismissed as unworthy of notice. The humans had fought not with brute force but with cleverness, adaptability, and, above all, the ability to think in ways no one expected. News of the victory reached every corner of the galaxy. The Xyrex, whose pride had already been wounded by the defeat of the Krahs, saw their worst fears coming to life. The human fleet wasn't just a nuisance, it was becoming a real threat. As more species began to reconsider their views on humanity, the tide of galactic politics began to shift. One thing was certain: humanity had proven they could fight on any battlefield in any position and with any strategy. There were no limits to their potential, and no corner of the galaxy was safe from the audacity of the human spirit. The Nzari retreat was only the beginning. The galaxy, still reeling from the news of humanity's unexpected victories, began to turn its gaze toward the human fleet with a mix of fear, curiosity, and disbelief. As the Xyrex Empire mobilized its forces, sending warships and spies to locate and neutralize the growing human threat, the humans continued to build their fleet, quietly yet strategically. Their tactics weren't always clear, but the results were undeniable. In a remote system far beyond the reach of the Xyrex and their allies, humanity began working on a new project. This time, however, it wasn't a weapon of mass destruction, nor a new class of warships. It was something entirely different, something that would change the nature of war itself. The project was called the Veil. A secretive program led by some of the brightest minds humanity had ever produced, it was designed to harness the one advantage that no other species in the galaxy had: human unpredictability. If the Xyrex, the Nzari, and the Krahs had underestimated humanity before, they would soon learn that they had only seen the tip of the iceberg. The Veil would allow humans to fight in ways that were nearly incomprehensible to other species. Humanity had learned, through the difficult battles with the Krahs and the Nzari, that the galaxy's superpowers relied too much on predictability, discipline, and brute force. These species fought within the limits of their understanding of warfare, rules of engagement, honor, strategy, rules that were ingrained in their cultures. But the humans, driven by necessity and innovation, had begun to experiment with something far less conventional. The Veil was designed to disrupt all expectations. It wasn't a new weapon. It wasn't a fleet of unbeatable ships. Instead, it was a strategy that capitalized on human flexibility, ingenuity, and adaptability in ways that no one, not even the humans themselves, could entirely anticipate. In essence, the Veil was a hidden force, a psychological weapon that would manipulate the minds of its enemies, forcing them into a state of constant uncertainty. The plan was deceptively simple. It involved using advanced stealth technology, coupled with human psychology and information warfare, to cause confusion and doubt within enemy ranks. Ships would appear out of nowhere only to disappear again, creating chaos. Misinformation would flood enemy communication channels, sowing distrust and making it impossible to discern friend from foe. By the time an enemy realized what was happening, it would be too late. They would already be defeated. But the true brilliance of the Veil lay in its ability to manipulate the perception of those who faced it. The technology was designed to make ships appear in places they shouldn't be, to create illusions and false readings that would lead enemies to believe they were facing a far larger, far more coordinated force than they were. Entire fleets would be drawn into false engagements, and even the most disciplined species would find themselves battling shadows and mirages. It was in a remote system near the edge of human space that the Veil was first deployed in a full-scale operation. The Xyrex Empire, having learned of the growing human fleet, had dispatched a massive warship, the Excalibur, to the system, intending to destroy the human forces once and for all. The humans had baited them into this trap by leaving behind what appeared to be a valuable target, a human research station with vital technologies. The Xyrex were eager to seize this opportunity. But as soon as they arrived in the system, they realized something was horribly wrong. At first, the system appeared quiet, too quiet. No human vessels were in sight. The Xyrex, accustomed to hunting down and crushing their enemies with ease, began to grow suspicious. But they didn't retreat. Instead, they sent scouts to investigate, expecting to find nothing more than a few scattered remnants of humanity's scattered forces. What they didn't expect was a full-scale assault, not with overwhelming numbers or firepower, but with the Veil in full force. Human ships, undetectable by conventional means, began to appear from nowhere, firing devastating, highly targeted strikes at the Xyrex vessels. Every time the Xyrex turned to engage, the humans had already moved. The Xyrex couldn't track them. They couldn't find them. Their scans turned up nothing. But the human attacks kept coming. They appeared like ghosts, 1 minute here, the next minute gone. The Xyrex commanders began to panic. Their own fleet began to fall apart, as crew members argued about whether they should pursue the elusive humans or hold their position. Misinformation spread like wildfire. The fleet became paralyzed with doubt. They no longer knew if they were attacking the right targets, or if the humans were playing an even deeper game. In the chaos, the Excalibur, the flagship of the Xyrex fleet, began to lose its cohesion. Communications from the bridge were intercepted, causing confusion among the Xyrex officers. The human forces didn't even have to directly engage the massive warship. By the time the Xyrex realized they were under full attack, their entire battle plan had collapsed. Their fleet was scattered, their morale shattered, and they were forced to retreat in disarray. The result was a humiliating defeat for the Xyrex. But what terrified them more than anything wasn't the destruction of their fleet, it was the unknown nature of the attack. The human fleet didn't rely on superior firepower or overwhelming numbers. They didn't fight on the same terms as everyone else. They had fought in a way that no one had ever anticipated, through confusion, manipulation, and an unseen psychological force that left their enemies paralyzed with uncertainty. And yet, for all their confusion, the Xyrex didn't realize the most important part of the human victory. This wasn't the final battle. Humanity wasn't interested in just winning, they were reshaping the very nature of warfare itself. They had proven that they didn't need to play by anyone's rules. And that made them the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever seen. As the Xyrex Empire retreated, bruised and uncertain, the galaxy stood on the precipice of a new era. And no one knew what to expect next. One thing, however, was certain. Humanity was here to stay. The aftermath of the Xyrex debacle sent ripples through the galaxy that would take years to fade. The defeat of such a massive fleet by humans using unconventional methods had shaken the foundations of galactic power. The Xyrex, once the unquestioned rulers of the stars, found themselves unable to recover from the psychological scars left by the battle. Humanity, however, continued to advance, its influence spreading across the galaxy as they demonstrated time and again that their true strength lay not in overwhelming might, but in their uncanny ability to adapt and evolve. Though many in the galaxy still underestimated humanity, a new faction began to take notice, the Orixian Syndicate. This shadowy group of mercenaries, assassins and black market traders had long operated in the fringes of galactic society, offering their services to the highest bidder. The syndicate was ruthless, secretive, and efficient, but they had one principle that set them apart from other factions. They did not ally with anyone unless they stood to gain something significant in return. And with the rising human threat, they realized they had something to gain. The Eryxian Syndicate had learned all too well that the galaxy's existing power structures could no longer guarantee safety. The Zyrex Empire was reeling, the Nzari were licking their wounds, and the Cross had been left in disarray after their humiliating loss to the humans. There was a growing sense that humanity had the potential to rewrite the rules of power. The Syndicate had learned from their own experiences. When the established order fell, it was the ruthless adaptability of a new power that prevailed. So, the Eryxian Syndicate decided to act. Their leadership saw an opportunity to not only profit from humanity's rise but to manipulate the situation for their own ends. The Syndicate reached out to the humans, covertly, through a series of encrypted channels and anonymous intermediaries. At first, the humans were suspicious, but the Syndicate had a single card to play: information. The Syndicate offered humanity something that no other faction could. They provided access to a vast network of spies, data thieves, and assassins who had infiltrated every major empire in the galaxy. With this information, the humans could gain an upper hand in diplomacy, warfare, and even covert operations. In exchange, the Syndicate asked for one thing: an alliance that would guarantee their continued freedom and influence, a partnership that would shape the future of the galaxy. The humans, ever wary of alliances with such a morally ambiguous faction, were hesitant at first. But after a series of successful operations, strategic strikes that crippled key Zyrex outposts and eliminated threats to their growing influence, the humans saw the potential. They weren't naive. They knew that the Syndicate could be a useful tool, but they also knew how dangerous it could be to trust them too completely. Yet, in a galaxy where trust was scarce, the humans took the gamble, choosing to form a delicate, pragmatic alliance. As the years passed, the Syndicate's support allowed humanity to expand its reach. The Veil Project grew more sophisticated, providing intelligence on enemy movements and weaknesses, while also ensuring that any attempts at subversion or sabotage were quickly neutralized. The humans had become an unstoppable force, a force that was no longer playing by anyone's rules but their own. However, the Syndicate's true intentions remained unclear. Behind the scenes, their leaders plotted, waiting for the right moment to make their move. They were patient. They knew that humanity's rise could eventually lead to a power struggle, an era of uncertainty that could be exploited to their advantage. But they underestimated one crucial element: the humans had no intention of remaining beholden to anyone. As their power grew, so did their autonomy. They no longer needed the Syndicate's support, nor did they need anyone's permission to take what they wanted. It was during a secret meeting on the human flagship Uprising that the first seeds of doubt were planted within the Syndicate's ranks. A group of high-ranking human officers gathered to discuss the future of their alliance. They were well aware of the Syndicate's manipulative tactics, but they also understood that the Syndicate's intelligence network had been invaluable. Captain Mara Delphine, one of the most trusted commanders in the human fleet, stood before the gathered officers. Her reputation for strategic brilliance and ruthless efficiency had earned her respect, and fear, from both allies and enemies. "We've used the Syndicate's resources to grow stronger," she said, her voice calm and measured. "But we must not forget that they only operate in their own interest. They see us as a tool, as a means to expand their influence. Our victory over the Zyrex and the Nzari was not just a victory for humanity, it was a message. We will no longer be anyone's pawn. It's time to decide whether we're ready to sever our ties with them before they sever us from the inside out." There was silence in the room, each officer considering her words carefully. While the alliance had proven beneficial, many knew the time was approaching when the Syndicate's interests would no longer align with humanity's. Captain Delphine's warning rang true. The Syndicate was a serpent that slithered beneath the surface, always waiting for the moment to strike. In that moment, the human fleet began to realize something fundamental. The Syndicate had given them power, yes, but it was only by giving humanity the tools to wield that power on their own terms that they would truly become unstoppable. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were the shadow in the corner of the galaxy's future, and they would no longer be controlled. While the Syndicate's grip on humanity tightened, it also began to loosen in subtle ways. Human officers began to operate independently of their Syndicate allies. They turned to their own spies, their own network of operatives, as they prepared to face the inevitable confrontation. They knew that sooner or later the Syndicate would reveal its true intentions, and when it did, the humans would be ready. But there was one thing the Syndicate did not count on: humanity's ability to think differently. The Alliance had not been a step toward submission. It had been a step toward understanding how the Syndicate operated. And that understanding would prove to be the key to breaking free. The humans were ready to break the chains that bound them to the shadows and step fully into the light of their own future. The tension in the galaxy had reached a breaking point. Humanity's rapid rise had shaken the status quo, and their newfound alliance with the Eryxian Syndicate had made even the most powerful factions wary. But behind closed doors, an insidious truth was taking root, an undeniable reality that the humans were beginning to understand fully. The Syndicate had always been playing a long game, one that had never included humanity as an equal partner. Human commanders, especially those at the heart of the fleet, had long suspected that the Syndicate's intentions were less about mutual benefit and more about control. As Captain Mara Delphine had warned, the Syndicate's methods were to make use of humanity's talents only until they had outlived their usefulness. And that day, it seemed, was rapidly approaching. The first sign of the Syndicate's true nature came during an encrypted transmission intercepted by human intelligence officers. It was meant to be an internal communication, a message between the upper echelons of the Syndicate's leadership. But the human interceptors had cracked the code. They discovered that the Syndicate was no longer interested in an alliance. It was planning to betray humanity and seize the technology and strategic assets that the humans had accumulated. The message revealed that the Syndicate's leaders had been conspiring with a faction of the Xyrex to undermine humanity's growing power, with the intention of destabilizing the human fleet from within. Their plan was simple: cause enough doubt and mistrust among the humans, sow discord within their ranks, and when the fleet was divided, strike. The Syndicate would then be able to take control of the remnants of humanity's technology and use it to strengthen their own position in the galaxy. Captain Delphine, who had long been suspicious of the Syndicate, had the intercepted transmission forwarded to the highest command levels of the human fleet. She knew that this was the moment where the fate of humanity would be decided. They could no longer afford to be pawns in the Syndicate's game. The time for subtlety and diplomacy was over. They had to act before it was too late. Within hours, the human fleet was mobilizing for a full-scale operation, a counterstrike designed to catch the Syndicate off guard, expose their betrayal, and sever the ties between the two factions once and for all. But as Delphine's fleet prepared for action, she knew there was something deeper at play. The Syndicate wouldn't just let this betrayal slide. They would retaliate with everything they had. This would be a battle for humanity's future, one that would determine whether they could remain free or be shackled once again. The first step of the operation was simple: cut off all Syndicate communications. The human fleet had already learned the hard way that secrecy and information warfare were their greatest strengths. Delphine's officers coordinated a precise strike against the Syndicate's encrypted channels, jamming their ability to communicate with their operatives across the galaxy. They also launched a series of attacks against Syndicate strongholds, disrupting their control and sending a clear message: humanity had already seen through their plans. But the Syndicate's response came swiftly. Within hours, the human fleet found itself facing a series of brutal counterattacks. Syndicate mercenaries, now working with factions within the Xyrex and Zari, launched coordinated strikes against human colonies. These were not just military engagements, they were psychological operations designed to break the will of humanity's civilians, to make them question whether their leaders could protect them. Humanity was about to face a new kind of war, a war that targeted their very spirit, their resilience. The Syndicate wasn't just trying to destroy human ships, they were trying to break the very heart of the human cause. Captain Delphine knew that the battle would not be won on the battlefield alone. The Syndicate was a master of manipulation, and they would use every tool at their disposal to cause division within human ranks. The human officers were prepared, but the greatest weapon they had was the unity of their people. Humanity had been born in conflict, grown through struggle, and thrived in adversity. They had survived against overwhelming odds time and time again. This, Delphine realized, was humanity's true strength. While the Syndicate's mercenaries launched attacks on human worlds, the human fleet worked in the shadows to weaken their enemies. They used every tool they had developed, the Veil technology, advanced psychological warfare, and precision strikes, against the Syndicate's key facilities. The Syndicate thought they were in control, but the humans had learned to think in ways their enemies could not. It wasn't long before the Syndicate's leadership realized that their plan was faltering. The human fleet had become too strong, too unpredictable. The Syndicate had underestimated humanity's resolve. As the Syndicate's forces spread thin, Delphine saw an opening. The human fleet had already crippled much of the Syndicate's command structure and cut off their supply lines. Now it was time to go for the heart of the Syndicate, their leaders. In a daring raid, Delphine's forces infiltrated one of the Syndicate's most secure outposts, a massive station hidden in the dark corners of the galaxy. It was here that the Syndicate's leadership coordinated their operations. Here where the final pieces of their plot to betray humanity were set in motion. Delphine and her elite team of officers slipped aboard the station, navigating through a maze of heavily guarded corridors. They knew the stakes were high and the chances of survival were slim. But they also knew that if they didn't take down the Syndicate's leadership now, humanity would never be truly free. As Delphine approached the Syndicate's central command room, she realized how much humanity had changed. Just a few short years ago they had been an unknown force, dismissed by the galaxy as inconsequential. Now they were not just surviving, they were taking control of their own destiny. With a single, decisive strike, the human team disabled the Syndicate's leadership, cutting off their command structure. The Syndicate's operations began to unravel. The final blow had been delivered. But even as the Syndicate's empire collapsed, Delphine knew this was not the end. The galaxy was vast and many more factions would challenge humanity's rise. But one thing was clear, humanity had proven that they could not be controlled, that they could not be manipulated. They had carved out their place in the stars. And from this point on, no one would dare to underestimate them again. The dust had settled, but the galaxy was far from at peace. The Syndicate's collapse had sent shockwaves across every corner of the known universe. Their betrayal of humanity was now a matter of history, but the ramifications were only beginning to unfold. While many had hoped that humanity's victory over the Eryxian Syndicate would signal the beginning of a new era of peace and prosperity, the reality was much more complex. The Syndicate's schemes had been part of a larger, more intricate web of galactic politics, one that involved far more than just a few mercenary factions and broken alliances. Humanity's victory over the Syndicate had left the Zyrex and their allies in a state of stunned disbelief. But as Delphine and her fleet had swiftly learned, victory was fleeting in a galaxy that thrived on perpetual conflict. The Syndicate might have been crushed, but the galaxy's old powers were not about to let humanity's rise go unchallenged. Far from it. In fact, the Zyrex Empire, still reeling from their defeat at humanity's hands, had begun to regroup and plan their next move, this time with a single objective in mind: eradicate humanity before they could become an uncontrollable force. In the shadows, the Nzari were stirring as well. The defeat at the hands of humanity, while still awound in their pride, had created a much deeper fear. The Nzari, with their vast technological advancements and intricate social structures, had always viewed humanity as an anomaly, unpredictable, resourceful, and dangerous. Now, as the human fleet grew bolder and more confident, the Nzari began to see a clear threat on the horizon. If humanity could defeat the Syndicate and disrupt the balance of power within the Zyrex Empire, what would prevent them from doing the same with the Nzari themselves? And so, the stage was set for a new chapter in humanity's struggle for survival, a chapter where they would have to prove not just their strength, but their ability to navigate the treacherous waters of galactic politics. Captain Mara Delphine, ever the strategist, knew that the time had come for humanity to take the initiative. No longer would they play the role of the underdog, reacting to the whims of more powerful factions. Humanity had earned the right to dictate the terms of their future. But this wasn't going to be easy. The Zyrex, still with their immense military power, would not accept a loss without retaliating. The Nzari too were on the edge of their seats, waiting for any sign of weakness. Delphine's first priority was to solidify humanity's position in the galaxy. The Veil technology had proven itself to be a formidable weapon, but it was clear that humanity needed more than just stealth and psychological warfare. To truly thrive in the galaxy they needed allies, legitimate ones. They needed to form their own alliances, even with those who had once viewed them with suspicion or disdain. The first diplomatic move was to reach out to the Kraz, a warlike species that had clashed with humanity on multiple occasions. The Kraz had always been a mystery. Fiercely independent, they had a history of avoiding interstellar politics and had remained largely neutral during the chaos surrounding the Syndicate's collapse. But their neutrality had come at a cost. The Kraz had suffered under the oppressive weight of the Zyrex Empire for centuries, and though they had never fully aligned themselves with any faction, their disdain for the Zyrex was well known. Delphine sent a fleet of emissaries to the Kraz homeworld, hoping to persuade their leaders that an alliance with humanity was their best option. But the Kraz were skeptical. They had seen alliances come and go, only to be betrayed when the tide of war shifted. The Kraws had always prided themselves on their martial prowess and independence. They weren't keen on submitting to anyone even if that someone was humanity. For weeks, the negotiations were tense, each side unwilling to budge. But Delphine's team, using their keen understanding of Kraws culture, realized that they couldn't appeal to the Kraws through diplomacy alone. They needed to speak to the Kraws in a language they understood, through action. In a bold move, Delphine ordered a series of covert strikes against Zyrex supply lines near Kraws space. The strikes were fast, precise, and devastating. They crippled key Zyrex outposts, making it clear that humanity was no longer just a threat to be ignored. The Kraws, watching from the sidelines, took notice. The message was loud and clear. Humanity was strong, resourceful, and willing to fight for their place in the galaxy. The Kraws, recognizing an opportunity to weaken their age-old enemy, began to open up to the idea of a limited alliance. The Kraws weren't ready to fully embrace humanity, but they were willing to offer their support in exchange for protection against the Zyrex and other hostile factions. This was a victory for humanity, but it was only the first step. Delphine knew that they needed to secure more allies if they were to face the looming storm of Zyrex retaliation. There were whispers of another power, an ancient race that had been absent from galactic politics for centuries, the Aerolans. The Aerolans had been neutral during the Great Galactic Wars, and their isolationist policies had kept them out of the conflicts that shaped the galaxy. But their technological prowess was legendary, and if humanity could secure their support, it could tip the balance of power in their favor. Delphine dispatched a team of diplomats and military envoys to the Arilon homeworld, a lush, jungle-covered planet hidden deep in a remote system. The journey was long and perilous, but the human envoys were determined. The Aerolans, known for their reluctance to engage with outsiders, were a formidable challenge to approach. But humanity was no longer in a position to wait for opportunities to present themselves. They had to make their own fate. As the diplomatic team made contact with the Aerolans, they discovered that the ancient race had no intention of remaining neutral forever. The Aerolans had watched humanity's rise with growing interest. Their sudden, unexpected victories had caught the attention of the Arilon leadership, who were no longer content to remain in isolation. The Aerolans offered a deal. In exchange for their technological expertise, they would join humanity's coalition, but only on the condition that humanity could prove their worth. The challenge was set. Humanity now had to prove, through force and diplomacy, that they were the future of the galaxy, not just a fleeting anomaly but the true heirs to a new age of power. As the human fleet prepared for the next chapter of their journey, Delphine's resolve hardened. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for far too long, but now they would see the truth. Humanity would not be bound by the chains of the past. They would shape their own future. The galaxy had always been a place of chaos, of shifting alliances, betrayal, and endless conflict. But now something was different. Humanity, once seen as an insignificant player among the stars, was rising to the forefront of galactic power. No longer merely surviving, they were forging a new future for themselves. One in which they would not simply adapt to the existing order but create their own. Captain Mara Delphine, standing at the command center of the human flagship uprising, watched as the stars stretched out before her. The peace humanity had fought for, the alliances they had crafted, was fragile, still in its infancy. The Zyrex, though weakened, were far from defeated. The Nzari, still uncertain, eyed humanity with a mix of suspicion and fear. And yet, despite the challenges, humanity had reached a critical turning point. They had made allies where none existed before, and now they were on the precipice of shaping the future. The Kraws had joined their cause, offering their unparalleled martial prowess as a shield against the Zyrex. The Aerolans, the ancient race of isolationists, had cautiously agreed to assist humanity with their advanced technologies. Together, these factions formed the core of a new coalition, one that would challenge the dominance of the Zyrex and reshape the balance of power across the galaxy. But it wasn't just alliances that made humanity strong. It was their ingenuity, their ability to think beyond the constraints of tradition. They had learned from their enemies, adapted their tactics, and applied lessons that the galaxy's great powers had long forgotten. Humanity had become a force that no one could ignore, intelligent, resourceful, and always one step ahead. As Delphine reviewed the latest intelligence reports, she saw something that made her pause. A new fleet had been spotted moving in from the outer reaches of Zyrex space. This wasn't just a retaliatory strike, it was something larger, more coordinated, and far more dangerous. The Zyrex, still smarting from their losses to humanity, were not about to let the humans build their coalition without a fight. Delphine knew that this would be the moment of truth, the ultimate test of humanity's strength. She turned to her command team, her face resolute. Prepare the fleet. We need to send a message. The uprising's communications deck buzzed to life as Delphine issued orders across the fleet. She had no intention of simply defending humanity's position. The time had come for them to strike first, to show the galaxy that they were no longer passive players. The Zyrex had underestimated humanity once, and they would not make that mistake again. The human fleet, bolstered by their Kraz and Arilon allies, moved swiftly toward the heart of Zyrex-controlled space. Their mission was clear: deliver a crushing blow to the Zyrex fleet before it could reach their coalition's borders. The humans had perfected their tactics, blending their Veil technology with the brute force of Kraz warships, all while using Arilon innovations to create weapons of incredible precision. The battle began in the darkness of space, with the Zyrex fleet unaware of the human forces silently moving into position. The humans had learned the art of ambush, using stealth and surprise to take out key targets before the Zyrex even realized what was happening. It was an asymmetric battle. Humans were fighting not just with firepower, but with knowledge and the element of surprise. As the human fleet engaged, Delphine coordinated every maneuver with the precision of a master tactician. Ships slipped in and out of Veil shadows, taking down Zyrex command ships with pinpoint accuracy. Kraz warships, their hulking forms brimming with firepower, moved in to finish off the Zyrex's retreating vessels. The Zyrex, caught completely off guard, were overwhelmed. What had begun as a show of force had quickly turned into a devastating rout. But just as victory seemed within reach, the Zyrex fleet commander issued a final order, a desperate call for reinforcements. The Zyrex had one final trump card: a secret weapon, an ancient warship with the firepower to obliterate entire fleets. It was their last hope, their attempt to turn the tide in their favor. Delphine's heart sank as she watched the colossal ship emerge from a hidden slipstream, its weaponry charging with ominous power. The uprising and its fleet were too close to escape without a fight. The humans had already committed to this battle, and there was no turning back. The Zyrex had played their hand, and humanity had one last chance to prove that they were the true future of the galaxy. The Aerolans, sensing the gravity of the situation, quickly reconfigured their technology, offering humanity a weapon that could rival the Zyrex ship's power. It was a desperate gamble, one that relied on a fusion of Arilon technology and human ingenuity. Delphine's crew worked tirelessly, rewiring and modifying the ship's weapon systems for a single, decisive shot. As the Zyrex warship advanced, charging its massive cannons, Delphine ordered the uprising to engage. The human fleet, battered but not broken, charged forward with everything they had. The Kraz, their vessels roaring into battle, flanked the Zyrex warship, drawing its fire. The Arilon ships provided cover, keeping the Zyrex forces occupied long enough for the humans to make their move. With a single command, Delphine initiated the shot. A beam of energy, brilliant, focused, and devastating, ripped through space and struck the Zyrex warship dead center. The explosion was immense, sending shockwaves through the battle. The Zyrex flagship, their final weapon, was obliterated in a burst of light. The tide had turned. With their flagship destroyed, the remaining Zyrex forces began to fall back in disarray. The human fleet, now fully united and supported by their allies, swept through the remnants of the Zyrex forces, dismantling their resistance piece by piece. The message was clear: humanity was no longer an underdog. They were the future of the galaxy. As the final battle came to an end, Delphine stood before her crew, the weight of the victory settling in. They had faced impossible odds and they had emerged victorious. Humanity had proven once and for all that they could not be controlled. They could not be broken. They could not be underestimated. The galaxy would never be the same. In the aftermath, Delphine addressed the newly formed coalition. We've won today, but this is just the beginning. The galaxy is vast and there will always be those who seek to challenge us. But as long as we stand together, as long as we remember what made us strong in the first place, our will, our ingenuity, and our unity, there is nothing we cannot accomplish. Humanity had proven that it could rise no matter the challenge. The future was theirs to shape. And the stars at last were within their grasp. With the fall of the Zyrex fleet, the galactic landscape was irrevocably changed. Humanity had come from the fringes of the known universe, proving that even the most unexpected species could rise to power. Delphine stood on the bridge of the uprising, gazing out at the stars, the aftermath of the battle echoing in the stillness of space. The victory over the Zyrex had been hard-won, but the true test was only just beginning. The galaxy was a place of endless complexity, and while humanity had shattered one of its most formidable threats, new challenges loomed. The Nzari, watching with keen eyes from the shadows, had yet to make their move. The Aerolans, with their incredible technology, were a powerful ally, but their motivations remained unclear. And the Kraz, though loyal for now, had their own goals that sometimes clashed with humanity's. Unity, it seemed, was a fragile thing. Delphine's mission was no longer just about surviving, it was about ensuring that humanity's place in the galaxy was not only secure but also one of influence, one of power that would shape the future for generations to come. As the leader of humanity's fleet, she knew that the decisions made today would echo through the centuries. The first order of business was solidifying the human coalition, ensuring that the Kraz and the Aerolans remained allies and that the Nzari would not find cracks to exploit. Humanity had fought their way to the top, but their future stability would depend on diplomacy, trust, and an unyielding strength of character. Delphine knew this, and she understood that now was the time to lay the foundation of a new era. The Kraz had been an essential part of humanity's victory. Their warships had acted as shields, taking heavy fire to protect human ships, while their battle-hardened warriors had ensured that no retreat was possible for the Zyrex. Delphine had forged an unspoken bond with the Kraz, one built not on politics but on mutual respect. They weren't an easy people to win over, but the bond between their two peoples had been solidified in the fires of war. The Kraz leadership had already begun talks to extend their cooperation in a more formal way, but Delphine knew they were wary. The Kraz had never been ones for long-term alliances. They had always valued their independence above all else. As for the Aerolans, their advanced technology had been a game-changer. The energy weapons they had provided humanity had given them the edge needed to defeat the Zyrex's final weapon. But the Aerolans were cautious, every action they took was calculated. They had remained isolated for millennia, and humanity's sudden rise to prominence was unsettling. Delphine needed to be careful in how she approached them. They were not the type to be swayed by force. They respected knowledge, ingenuity, and purpose. Delphine was prepared to meet with the Arilan leaders once again, this time under more favorable circumstances. The human fleet had gained a position of strength, and it was time to use that leverage to secure humanity's future. But there was a new complication. The Nzari, the ancient and enigmatic race that had once watched from the edges of galactic conflicts, were beginning to stir. Humanity had fought the Zyrex, but the Nzari had never been truly involved, until now. Their spies had been watching from the start, taking notes on humanity's methods, their tenacity, their resilience. The Nzari had no interest in aligning with any one faction. They had never needed alliances. They had lived and thrived in isolation, their technological prowess allowing them to remain largely untouched by galactic wars. But with humanity's unexpected rise, the Nzari began to see a different path forward. Delphine understood that the Nzari would eventually come to the table. Whether as adversaries or allies was still uncertain. The challenge for humanity would be to ensure they could outthink and outmaneuver the Nzari, as they had done with the Zyrex. The Nzari respected strength, but they also respected cunning. The human fleet now had a new mission, to carve out a path of peace in a galaxy that had never known it, and to prepare for the Nzari's inevitable move. Delphine knew that if humanity was going to continue to rise, they needed to solidify their relationships with their current allies, secure new alliances, and be ready for whatever the Nzari could throw at them. Weeks passed as the human diplomats worked tirelessly, weaving the delicate web of alliances that would ensure their future. Delphine's strategy had always been one of patience, understanding that the best way to navigate the political landscape of the galaxy was to anticipate every move. Humanity, after all, had fought their way to the top. Now they would ensure they remained there. The day came when the Nzari made their presence known. They did not come in force as the Zyrex had, but in quiet elegance. A delegation arrived aboard an unassuming ship, their representatives dressed in sleek, shimmering armor that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. The Nzari were striking, enigmatic, and commanding, beings who could not be ignored. Delphine greeted them in the council chambers of the uprising, surrounded by her closest advisors. The Nzari leaders, composed and poised, wasted no time in getting to the point. "You are an anomaly, Captain Delphine," the Nzari envoy said, their voice cool, almost like a whisper that echoed in the silence. "You have done what no one expected. The Zyrex have fallen, the Kraz are allied with you, and the Aerolans provide you with technology that rivals our own. We respect strength. And we understand that you are no longer just a species to be ignored." Delphine stood firm. "Humanity will not be controlled. We've earned our place here. We will not be a tool in anyone's hands." The Nzari envoy nodded, an expression that seemed almost approving. "We are not here to control you, Captain. We are here to offer you a choice. We have watched you for some time and we see the potential for something greater. You have the strength and the intelligence to build an empire. You could rule this galaxy should you choose." Delphine's mind raced. The Nzari were offering power, absolute power. But the price of that power was not just alliances. It was submission to their ways, their ancient knowledge, and their control. Humanity had always fought for freedom, and now they had to decide what they wanted: the galaxy at their feet or the freedom to chart their own destiny. "I will not lead humanity into slavery," Delphine said firmly. "We will create our own future. Our own empire, built on the strength of our will and the unity of our people." The Nzari envoy tilted their head, a hint of admiration in their eyes. "Then you will stand alone. But know this, we are always watching. The galaxy is vast, and you will need more than strength to hold your place. Remember, the Nzari do not forget." As the Nzari delegation departed, Delphine turned to her crew. "Humanity will rise, but on our own terms. We'll carve a path through this galaxy, not as pawns in someone else's game, but as the masters of our own fate." The legacy of humanity had begun, not as a fleeting spark in the void, but as a blazing beacon of possibility, showing the galaxy that no force, no matter how great, could ever extinguish their light. The future belonged to them. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.